Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and today is another solo episode. Now, I did not plan for this to be a solo episode. As you can tell from the title of this podcast, that there is a story there. And I guess this is kind of perfect timing for this. So I had two amazing interviews last week that I was so excited to share with all of you. And for some reason, there were technical difficulties with both of them, and they are both unusable. So I was really bummed. And I realized today, Monday, that neither one of them are workable. I don't have time to re-record either of them. So you're getting a solo episode from me today. I hope to get them back on to re-record so I can actually share both of their amazing stories with you, because you are going to love both of them. But today we are going to talk about being okay. Now, there's a big story with all of this. Today was one of those days, and I'm sure you've all had them, where nothing went right. One thing after another, compounded with conversations that I had with people where things were not going right in their lives either. It was, as I'm recording this, it was a Monday. I am sure that you have all had those. Now, what does this have to do with cancer, you may ask? So I did a podcast, a solo episode. I don't know, I think it was the first solo episode that I did about survivor's guilt, about feeling that we can be undeserving because our experience was maybe not as dramatic as somebody else's, that kind of thing. I was talking to a friend of mine today at the gym who had surgery, a lumpectomy, 2 months ago. She was very similar to me as far as, okay, let's get it done. I found out I've been diagnosed. What do I have to do to get it out of me? Let's get it over as quick as possible and move on. That was what she did. Now it's been 2 months since her surgery, and all of a sudden it's all hitting her, and she is crying a lot. She is not okay. And she doesn't understand why all of a sudden this is all happening. She's a couple of months out from her treatments. She thought she was done. She's cancer-free. What is going on? She doesn't want to be this way. She just wants to put it all behind her, and the emotions are coming anyway. And I said to her, we all need to grieve in our own time, in our own way. And it's okay to not be okay. That is just one conversation that I had. I had a conversation with another woman last week who I can't wait to get on the show. She is a nurse navigator, and she was talking about her conversations with patients in the beginning, in the middle, at the end, later on, where these emotions just come out of nowhere. Sometimes you end up snapping at somebody who cuts you off in line, or cuts you off in traffic, or says the wrong thing. And my husband calls it cashing in stamps. Now, if any of you are old enough to remember the old S&H green stamps that were so cool that you would get when you purchased certain things, and they came with these little booklets, and they were little green stamps that said S&H on them. I can't remember what S&H stands for. And you would fill up these little booklets with these stamps. And once you filled up a booklet, you could cash that in for something, a radio or a clock or something. It was just you were collecting stamps and then you cashed them in. And my husband likes to say that, you've got all of these emotions going on and you're just building up and building up and building up and trying to be okay and trying to be okay and trying to be okay. And then someone cuts you off in line or something goes wrong and you have to call customer service about something and you just go off on that person. And that person is not the reason for your anger, but they're the one who was kind of the last straw. And as my husband calls it, you cash in your stamps on that person. Now, we don't ever mean to do that. That's not who most of us are. But sometimes it just happens. And it's like a powder keg that you're trying to be okay for everyone in your life. And you're trying to be okay for yourself. And you're trying to get through the day. And eventually you just kind of lose it. Now, I don't want to say that that's okay because we never want to go off on someone who doesn't deserve it. And hopefully we have the opportunity to go back and apologize once clearer heads prevail. But sometimes you need that release. I think somewhere along the line, we were taught that everything has to be okay. And if someone asks you how you are, oh, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm okay. Everything is okay. And sometimes it's just not. We need to get comfortable with the idea that it's okay to not always be okay. Cancer is a really big deal, whether it was 12 millimeter lump that was taken out and no radiation needed, no chemo needed, no nothing needed. That was it. Life is great. Or if it's a really big deal and it's taking treatment for sometimes years, it's still cancer. Just because it wasn't such a big deal to some people doesn't mean it's not a big deal to you. We have emotions for a reason, and all emotions are okay. They may not always be appropriate at a certain time, but if we stifle our anger, our grief, our sorrow, because we don't think that they're appropriate emotions, and we need to be okay for the people around us, eventually that emotion is going to come out in some way, whether you go off on somebody who doesn't deserve it, or you keep that emotion unprocessed, unresolved, and then it causes something else inside your body. I think Louise Hay says that cancer is really unresolved anger toward yourself from an emotional standpoint. Now, I don't necessarily 100% agree with that. Some people do, some people don't. We may never know what causes cancer. If we knew what caused it, we would know how to cure it. And there are so many different causes. But we do know that stifled emotions and unprocessed emotions and trauma do lead to other illnesses, sicknesses, diseases, because that emotion has to go somewhere. So kind of what I'm saying in a roundabout way is that we can have moments, we can have hours, we can have days where we're not okay. And that's okay. I didn't go off on my husband this afternoon, but It was the craziest thing. We were trying to figure out what to make for dinner, and I just didn't want to have to make another decision. And I threw some broccoli in the steamer to cook. Apparently, it was past its prime and stunk up the whole house, and I just kind of lost it. And I walked out the door because I didn't want to go off on my husband. It wasn't his fault. And he came outside. He's like, we can try the broccoli. Like, it's really okay. And I just looked at him and I said, I'm not okay. I just need a few minutes to myself. And he went back inside and he found something else to make for dinner. And I sat on the porch and I cried for a couple of minutes and just let everything out from my day. And then I felt better. And now I have a relationship with my husband where I just have to say, I'm not okay. Can you give me a few minutes? And he understands and he will give me that time. If he pushed me, I might have cashed in some stamps on him, and I didn't want to do that. So the long and the short of all of this is to let you know, which you already do, but this is just confirmation that emotions are okay to feel. There are no good or bad or right or wrong emotions. Happiness and sadness are just two sides of the same coin. And as they say, you can't experience true happiness without understanding sadness, because you have to know one to appreciate the other. Joy and anger, same thing. You can't know true joy unless you can understand anger. So emotions are a part of grief, and grieving isn't just when there's a death that you need to grieve a death. Any kind of a loss, there's grief involved in that. And whether it's the loss of a breast, whether it's the loss of a friendship, whether it's the loss of a podcast interview, loss is loss. And grief comes in many different forms. And when you are able to feel that and be able to experience that grief, that's how you move through it and get to the other side. If you continue to stuff it down or put it aside, say, I'll deal with this later, you will deal with it later. It's not always as easy, and it's never easy, but grief is going to find a way. And the more you can process it as it comes, instead of letting it all build up and fester and be put aside until it won't be put aside anymore, then things become more of a challenge at that point. So know this with true love from me, that there are times you're not going to be okay. And that's okay. What's not okay is to live in the not okay. We can have moments, we can have days, but the people in our lives need us, and they eventually need us to be okay. So feel the feelings, work through the grief, the anger, the sadness. Don't just let it live in you forever. because it will eventually be okay. I promise you that. And you're okay, and my okay, maybe different okays, but we're all gonna be okay at some point. So feel the feels, be not okay, take a day and stay in bed under the covers and cry, or watch sappy rom-coms or Hallmark movies or thrillers or John Wick, where he just goes and kills everybody. Whatever it is for you, feel that and then work on feeling better or getting help. And I always recommend therapy is an incredible tool. It is life-saving for many people. Find someone to confide in. Find someone to support you. Find someone to talk to who can help you. Sometimes that's a family member. Sometimes that's a friend. Many times it's someone who's professionally trained. And now we just had an interview last week about the importance of mental health and therapy going through cancer. So I get to reiterate that this week. Seek some help. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. And getting help can help get you closer to being okay. So I love you all. Thank you for bearing with me this week. I am doing my best to figure out these technical issues to be able to get you another great interview next week. In the meantime, you get me, and I love you, and I'm so grateful for all of you for tuning in to one episode, to all the episodes, whatever speaks to your heart that you want to hear. I am just so grateful for this opportunity to be in your ears, to be on your screen, however you're listening or watching. It really means the world to me. And I am working every day to continue to bring you great content, great interviews, great stories. I want to hear from you. What do you want to hear more of? What kind of guests do you want to listen to? And what kind of topics do you want me to talk about? Find people who can talk about. This is about you guys and me being able to help you or just be with you on your journey. So have a great week, everybody. Be okay, be not okay, and it's all okay. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.